Grab your beverages and turn up your interweb. It's time for the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast.
Fantasy freaks and geeks, what is up? It's Matt McPeak here with my buddy Adam with the Week 3 preview episode of the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast. Adam, what's your situation with all your leagues? Are you 0-2 in any leagues?
Well, first off, happy football season, everybody. Going into Week 3, we're finally getting past this muck and mess that I still consider preseason. I actually consider preseason basically through Week 4 at this point, since they don't hit and they get hurt and
dude's pulling hamstrings.
It's a disaster. I don't know why they don't just switch. Go to 18 games at this point, since the first 4 they're worthless. But other than that, I'm just happy to be here. I hope everybody has been listening to some of our advice, not to toot our horns here, because you could go both ways. Trust me, I remember what I said about the Vikings receivers.
Yeah, you're eating it on that one.
I will stand here and eat that fully.
Stephon Diggs ain't going to be good, dude. Ugh.
I was worried about how Kirk was going to distribute that ball. Clearly, that was a worry that I hope everybody ignored. And if you didn't, well, you win some, you lose some.
And it's all your fault, bro.
It is. But to make up for that amends, I like to tell you, 2 weeks later, if you go back into the beautiful archives of our podcast, both me and Matt here praised, preached, and said James Conner all day. Yep. Before the season started. If you
handcuff your running backs, handcuff your top running backs. This season so far, like, you've seen Joe Mixon go down. Now he's going to be out for a couple weeks. Devontae Freeman. I mean, that's a really tough handcuff to make, because obviously he has the most standalone value. You got to draft him higher than any other handcuff. But we saw Melvin Gordon go down. It seems like he's going to be fine. James Conner's obviously is going to end up being the MVP of most people that win their leagues that have him. We're just seeing him all over the place. Leonard Fournette's down. These top running backs, everywhere. Do yourself the biggest favor and draft their handcuff with your last pick and keep them on the end of your bench. And if you need them, you're going to be so happy that you did it. And if you don't need them, okay, you wasted your last pick. It doesn't matter.
And you know what? Just to reiterate why that's important again, especially now, before they changed preseason the way they did, and every year they hit less and less and less. I mean, I watched every preseason game, and most teams don't even bother putting their starters in at this point because they're worried of injury. But then these guys come out, and it is like dominoes the first few weeks.
Yeah, they're trying to hit the ground running at 100% after they really haven't gone 100%. Even in practice, even in training camps,
it's unbelievable. So if you're going into these seasons thinking I'm good, you're not. And if you are, you got lucky, and it's only Week 3. Just wait.
Yeah, so just wait. How about we talk about some guys that we think, we've been hearing, people panicking about, people trying to trade them off, and let's talk about some guys that we don't think it's time to panic on yet. Some of them not even yet, but to me, the biggest one, I have Dalvin in one of my leagues, is Dalvin Cook. He's had 40 yards essentially in both of his first 2 games. Rush yards, that is. No touchdowns so far. But, dude, don't panic. He's coming off of a torn ACL. He's involved in the pass game there. As they come more along, he's going to be getting more carries every week. You should see that carry total keep going up and up and up. He was drafted drafted high for a reason. He's a beast. He's going to be fine. So don't panic on Dalvin Cook. And I think the other who was drafted probably in right around the same range, if not back-to-back, is Leonard Fournette. He's coming off this hamstring injury. You got Fournette in any of your leagues?
Oh, I'm going to sit here and tell the fantasy world that not only do I have Fournette, I have Dalvin Cook, I have the duo, I've got the trio when we get further into this. Yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, boy, because, it's there. It's there. If you followed Leonard Fournette since his youth, which thanks to ESPN, randomly we've been seeing this kid play football since the 10th grade. He's going to be good.
He's going to be fine. The next guy I think is Quan Barkley. People, especially, me being a Jet fan, I listen to New York Sports Talk Radio in the morning while I'm in the shower getting ready for work, whatnot. And just listening to some of these Giant fans calling in, freaking out. I mean, obviously, yes, the offensive line looks absolutely putrid. It looks like it hasn't made any improvement from last year.
Atrocious.
But he's a beast, man. And in PPR leagues last week, he showed he's probably the guy who's going to benefit most from this bad offensive line. He caught, I think it was 14. He caught 14 passes. He got 17 targets, I think it was. Like, he's going to be fine. Don't panic. He's going to be fine.
I'm going to speak from personal experience on that one. I drafted Quan Barkley over Alvin Kamara.
You were that guy that went
I was
Barkley
that
first?
guy that went Barkley over Kamara. Now, it was the 6th pick, and I sat there, and my plan the entire time was Kamara. I didn't think Saquon would fall. And do you hear any panic in my voice yet?
I don't. You seem relatively calm today, Adam.
That's because we're talking about Saquon and not my receivers.
Yeah.
But listen, guys.
You just got one of your boys back. Jordan Matthews is back in Philadelphia, so hopefully he can make plays. Maybe it's the thing Carson needs to feel more comfortable coming into his first start. That's what I needed to be reminded, that not only does my fantasy team have a severe lack of receivers because of injury, my favorite professional team has a severe lack of receivers because of injury. One team that does not have a lack of receivers is Kansas City, and
they do
brings
not.
up another running back that we don't think it's time to panic on, at least not yet. We'll see how the Patrick Mahomes operated offense works, as far as getting Hunt involved in the pass game. Maybe he's just not the type of quarterback that wants to drop the ball off to a running back when he's looking for an outlet. I think he's still looking downfield as opposed to what we saw with Alex Smith last year. Second, his first read's not there. He's just dumping it off to the running back. So we'll see how this Kansas City offense shakes out. I mean, yeah, it's been historic what they've been doing. Patrick Mahomes thrown 10 touchdown passes in his first 2 games. It's been crazy. Let's see, how it shapes up with the run game coming forward, especially looking at how awful that defense is. I think there's going to be times. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes has shown that he can throw the ball with anybody, but I think they're still going to have to run the ball at times in this season.
And you know what everybody tends to sleep on? I'll call it sleep on during these short, small sample size games is that it takes, sometimes I guess it could take a year if it's an entire new offensive scheme.
And he was on the team the whole last year learning it. So
it takes these D coordinators no time to adjust to these new style quarterbacks. I mean, everyone thought Deshaun Watson was going to come slinging out of the gate.
Yeah, he's been struggling a little bit.
It's the same story. They're
struggling
NFL,
just a little bit. I'm not going to say he's struggling, but
I'm not coming out saying I'm not starting Deshaun.
But then again, like if
it'll even out.
If the bar for him is what he did last year, then yes, he's going to quote-unquote struggle. But, I mean...
That's a good point, though. That's your point to the Mahomes situation. Mahomes is not coming out throwing 6 touchdowns a week, ladies and gentlemen. If you have Kareem Hunt and you're trying to sell him low, call me. I'll buy him every time.
For the new to fantasy football people out there, don't look at what Patrick Mahomes has done and be like, okay, I have to trade for this guy. I got to make a trade. Yes, he's probably going to end up being one of the top 10 QBs this year, but don't sell the farm to try and get this guy, especially at the quarterback position. You're going to be able to, whatever guy you drafted on top of people that are going to be available on the waiver wire, you'll be fine. Don't go crazy trying to make trades for guys that have had big games so far this season,
especially during this glorified extension of preseason. You wouldn't trade during preseason for the most part unless there's an injury or something because you understand it's preseason. This isn't the offense. Look at it the same way. It's preseason. This isn't the offense. Right. These aren't the defenses. They're going to level off.
Yeah, things will look different in a couple weeks. So let's get into the first game on the slate. My New York Football Jets are going over to Cleveland to play the Browns Thursday Night Football. I see this.
I got to stop you real quick. Do you ever just get embarrassed from saying my New York Football Jets? At this point, are they a football team? Are we talking the European kind where they're kicking it a bunch? I mean, I like Darnold.
They're 1-1, bro. Come on, cut me some slack.
I'm basing this off a 20-year sample size.
The reason, do you know the reason why I call them the New York Football Jets?
Well, I don't mind because of the football Giants. Yes. It's less about claiming the football part as it is about claiming the Jets. I mean,
dude. If the Eagles were this bad,
they were.
You're still an Eagles fan.
Unfortunately,
I'm a Jet fan. I wish I have gotten into arguments with my dad so many times. He passed along to me the New York Metropolitans and the Jets. I've been watching the Giants and the Yankees win championships almost every single year my entire life. It sucks, but I'm a Met fan and I'm a Jet fan. That's the way it is, and they're my team. So, yes, I am going to call them my New York Football Jets. And if you got a problem with it, I got 2 words for you, bro.
Let me take a caveat for a second why I wanted to give him that jab. If you're new to the NFL this season, or you might be new to fantasy, you might be new to the sport, pick your team, stick your team, and ride or die. Just like he said with his Jets, my Birds, up until this year, I mean, come on, heartbreak after heart. Now, we weren't as bad as the Jets. We weren't the doormat, but it arguably could have been worse because we were the perennial.
Jets haven't been the doormat of the AFC East. It's been the Bills, bro. Come on.
I would say the Bills became the recent doormat. They had that little surge. At least the Bills had the 90s.
In 1990, they had a surge.
The K-gun offense. They're still living off up that in Buffalo.
Whatever. We'll talk about this later, but I want to get into the Jets and Browns here. Yes, I think it's going to end up being one of these ugly, low-scoring Thursday night games. The Jets are playing their third. I'm not trying to make excuses here if they lose. They're playing their third game in 11 days to start the season.
That's just a lack of respect.
That's it. And they finished the season week 17 at New England. Like the schedule makers obviously sat down in a room and said, "All right, who are the teams that we want to screw this season?" And somebody was like, "How about the Jets?" And they all went, "All right, that sounds good. Let's screw the Jets."
It's the same idea. Jacksonville wouldn't be the London team if they were Jacksonville 10 years ago.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You win some games.
You take on those London games because you can't sell any tickets. They're selling plenty of tickets.
When's the last time you saw the Patriots in London?
Have they? No, they played in London before, but they're not hosting a home game in London.
I'm guessing they played in London because Tom wanted a vacation. No other reason. NFL asked him.
He wanted to go see Big Ben.
Right. They said, "Hey, Tom, what do you think about this?"
So, like I said, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. The two defenses here, surprisingly, if you look at the top 5 defenses so far this season, the Jets and the Browns are both in the top 5.
I think those are the hottest waiver wire defenses right now. The Jets might be available.
The Jets have forced 7 turnovers. The Browns have forced 8. So defenses are not bad. So Thursday night game, offense is coming off of a short week. They only have a couple days to prepare. Blah 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 blah. You've all heard this crap before. I'm still going to start Quincy Enunwa. He's got 21 targets this season. He's obviously the Jets' number 1 receiver. Pryor with a revenge game here. Last week he got 8 targets.
Those revenge games for a bum of a receiver like Terrell Pryor. If you're starting a receiver on the Jets, it's Robbie Anderson or
I don't know, man.
I know Anderson's been flat, but
I don't know if throwing the ball down the field is something that the Jets want their rookie quarterback doing consistently, and because of that, I don't see Robbie Anderson having anywhere near as much value as obviously Quincy Enunwa and honestly Terrell Pryor, because he got 8 targets last week. He caught 2 of them for he caught 4 of them for 84 yards. I'll take 8 targets over 1 or 2 deep ball targets that hopefully my guy catches.
Let me rephrase that. Because to be fair, me stating,
hold on, real quick. These guys are obviously only flex options for you if your team is hurting.
Thank you. That you took the words right out of my mouth.
Sorry.
Really, I'm going to reiterate what Matt said. I'm busting his chops because he's a Jets fan.
Yeah, you're just trying to break my balls, bro. Can you cut me some slack? I gotta win week 1. My team looked good. I finally feel like I got a quarterback, and here we are sitting in my brand new podcast studio, and you're beating me down, dude. Come on.
I guess you take the flyer on Pryor. But
why not, dude?
The one you start with confidence is Enunwa. I mean, 2 weeks in, that dude is
21 targets speaks for itself.
Big body, athletic. He's basically a tight end at wide receiver.
Exactly. He's the guy, man. I really like him, and it's not just because I'm a Jet fan. I think he's shown he's obviously the best fantasy football player for us on that team. Carlos Hyde has kind of disappointed, I'd say, so far. He's gotten lucky with a touchdown in each of the first 2 games. Otherwise, I think we'd see people contemplating dropping him or just throwing him at the end of their bench and hoping that maybe he shows them something. But he's got an average yards per carry so far this season of 2.7. It's not that great. But then again, he is still getting the volume. He got 22 attempts in week 1. He got 16 in week 2. And these, I think the one cool thing about the Browns is that, yes, their first game they tied. What a Brown thing to do, right? But they've been in both of the games that they were in. Like, they should have won against the
this is the first
Saints.
year you can honestly say that the Browns have fantasy weapons on their
Right.
team.
They have some serious talent on the team, and I mean, you look at like they lose Josh Gordon. Obviously, it's what are they going to do to fill whatever void there was theoretically with Josh Gordon? I mean, he only really. I mean, what was his snap count in the first week? He didn't. I don't think he did anything in the second week because of the hamstring. Obviously,
He's basically been non-existent other than that one real nice play. From week
worrying
one.
about how they're going to replace him, I think Callaway showed like he obviously has the talent to be the number 2 receiver there. So I wouldn't really worry too much as a Browns fan. But talking fantasy football, obviously Callaway has some value. Again, I think he's nothing more than a flex until he shows that he's worth playing as a wide receiver too. Obviously, Jarvis Landry is going to get the overwhelming majority of targets there, so I wouldn't get too high on the one touchdown pass that he had. But
no, I wouldn't either.
He still
especially
looks
with
good.
Rashad Higgins there too, because he's still got some volume in those targets as well. So until you see, one of those two guys is going to end up being a good option.
And then you look at Duke Johnson. So apparently yesterday, the head coach Hugh Jackson came out and said we need to get Duke Johnson more involved. Hasn't really done much the first 2 weeks. And when you look at how the Jets did last year against, pass-catching running backs, they gave up the 9th most receiving yards to running backs. So could this be the game that maybe we see Duke Johnson actually be worth playing in the flex spot? I don't know. It may be in a PPR yet, but
If I had an injured running back, I'm certainly keeping my fingers crossed and hoping so.
yeah, like you said, obviously you're going to start Landry, and I would wait another week before putting Callaway into the slot spot.
100% agreed.
Let's see what he turns out into. Let's go over to the first NFC home game that you
So to re-eat my words, the only people you should be starting from this Bills-Vikings matchup are on the Vikings.
Right.
If you're starting anybody from the Bills, you made a mistake. I get it, Shady, you might have to because somehow you ended up having to draft him. And every year Shady surprises us, but their offensive line is garbage. They're trotting out, what is it, Josh Rosen?
I hope so.
They might as well. What do they have to lose?
Yeah.
Like at this point, you're terrible. So I'm staying away from the Bills off, especially against the Vikings defense. If you don't think the Vikings defense is going to hone in on Shady McCoy, if you have a backup running back, I would highly consider starting him. They're going to stack the box.
This is probably going to be the biggest pick in all of suicide pools, and when you watch the preview shows on Fox and CBS and ESPN,
right?
I don't see anyone taking the Bills. If they do, they're crazy.
I'm going to guess that the winning daily lineup this week comes from some sort of combination of that Vikings offense.
Right.
Kirk Cousins has come out. You've heard Mahomes a lot, and all. Kirk Cousins is more or less balled 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
I mean, he was tossing it last week. Both receivers are on fire. I was wrong. I get it. I'll
this
admit
Vikings team, I mean, if
Legit.
you're,
Wait till Cook
as a
comes
Phillies
really
fan,
into it.
like looking to defend your championship, to me, it's the Vikings and the Rams, obviously, as the two big teams. But the Vikings, dude, that defense is so good. And obviously, if you listen to the preview shows before the season started, I'm huge on Kirk Cousins. I think he's going to have an awesome season. The position players he has with him are just so good. I would be absolutely terrified as an Eagles fan, worrying about playing this Vikings team in the playoffs.
When we get to the Birds, I'll explain my lack of worry
All
on
right.
that Skull Nation, if you will, putting that on the Rocky statue. Get out of here.
So, obviously, this is probably the easiest game this week. Bills versus Vikings. Don't start any Bills. Start Vikings.
Literally no Bills, even if it's Shady.
Especially with Shady's broken cartilage.
Whatever it is, he's going to not have a good week. Yeah. I mean, I don't care if he was 100% healthy.
Don't start him.
Don't start him.
I want to talk about the Giants' offensive line a little bit more. They're playing the Texans. This is the third really tough defensive line they're going to face. And yes, I am considering the Dallas Cowboys to be a really tough defensive line.
They are.
They've what was it? I have the stat somewhere. Nah, I'll get it later. But
all you need to hear is what they did to Saquon.
If the Giants D is going to play as bad as they've been playing, like
atrocious,
it's it's disgusting how bad they've looked. That the first drive of the game against the Cowboys, they gave up that long pass to Tavon Austin. Then the second drive of the game, they gave up a long run to Zeke, and then Zeke another long run to Tavon Austin with Zeke tossing it to him. And then you had Dak Prescott going on a long run. Like if they're going to be giving up explosive plays like this, the Texans are going to absolutely destroy them.
Oh, yeah, and they're not giving up runs to the Dallas teams of last year. Remember, that line is not the same line anymore. Big injuries.
Yeah.
Like, they're giving it up to a much weaker that offense is awful, but we'll get to that later.
J.J. Watt and Merciless and Clowney are just licking their chops thinking about playing one of the most immobile quarterbacks in the league in Eli Manning against probably one of the worst offensive lines. Like, it's going to be an ugly game. I feel like the way I see the game flow going is the Texans go up early and the Giants are forced to throw the ball a lot. So obviously Odell will eat like he always does. And I bet it's going to be another big dump off to Barkley type of game. I think he's going to be huge in daily fantasy this week. Maybe not 14 catches again, but he's definitely going to be involved in the pass game.
Here's the question on that offense I got for you, because we know you start Odell. We know you start Saquon if you have them. You have to.
Right.
But what about Sterling Shepard?
I'm not starting.
He's a guy a lot of people have either on the bench or the flex. I'm staying away too.
I don't think, like I said, I think Eli's going to be under pressure the whole game, and I don't think Saquon is the guy running hot routes there. I think it's Barkley and Evans. Those are his two. Those are right. Eli's, two outlets, and I see them catching a whole bunch of balls this week because I think that defensive line is going to just destroy the Giants' offensive line. We maybe see a shootout because the Texans' defense hasn't really shown us all that much yet either, but I just doubt it. So, there's a hope that we could see, big numbers from the Giants' offense as a whole, but I just, obviously, like I said, I think Odell's going to get his numbers, but I think Saquon is not really going to do much in the running game. I think it's all going to be in the passing game.
I think there's one name from this game on either side of the ball. Now, I'm going to take D-Hop out. If you have D-Hop, you took him in the first round. I don't need to tell you to start DeAndre Hopkins.
You're starting DeAndre Hopkins.
We're going to give you that level of respect. That was the name.
That's the guy.
Will Fuller. So Will Fuller is owned in every league. Will Fuller was not started in every league. If you have Will Fuller, you start Will Fuller.
Yes.
There is a different Deshaun Watson under quarterback when Will Fuller is out there.
Yep.
You cannot keep up with him. You start him.
Yes. The other guy on the Texans that I think could really benefit from the game flow going the way I think it is with the Texans going up big, I know it's a joke, is Lamar Miller.
No, it's a serious statement now, and that's what bothers me the most.
Like he's getting touches. He got another 14 carries last week, turned him into almost 70 yards.
I drafted that dude 3 years in a row. When Lamar Miller came into the league in fantasy, he was a very high-valued running back. All this hype. After wasting my time, of course, now the year he goes in the 7th round, he ends up.
He's actually an RB1.
I can't take it. Yeah. I can't. I wish I had him.
We're just waiting for him to score a touchdown. So hopefully,
wherever
that happens this
wherever
week.
you got Lamar Miller, good for you. It wasn't high.
Let's go to our next NFC home game. What do you got?
Well, we're looking at the Packers-Redskins here, and let's be real with ourselves. Yeah, Redskins defense has Josh Norman. They got a good D-line. Aaron Rodgers is coming out Dyson. He's going to come out and put up the points. I'm not even going to harp on Aaron Rodgers. The running back situation in Green Bay, I mean, it's too hard week to week to know how much they're going to try and involve the running back or not. That's the one team where even game flow sometimes doesn't dictate it, depending on how they're feeling.
Right.
Like, they could just keep letting Aaron go. The receivers, Devontae Adams, you're starting. You have to start Randall Cobb now. If you have Randall Cobb, you have to start him.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers is a little bit more immobile since that and in the pocket, his ball distribution is far greater than when he's moving around. On the other side of that, on the other side of the ball, and again, I'm skipping Jimmy Graham. Most people, if you drafted Jimmy Graham, you're starting him because he's your top tight end. We told you about Geronimo Allison. Second week in a row, he came out and has been a good part of that offense. The other side of the ball is the Redskins. God, that offense is just driving me crazy. 1 week, Adrian Peterson comes out, looks like the truth. Next week, hardly there. The receivers, it's a toss-up. I'm not even going to sit here and pretend to tell you a receiver to start from that team. Other than that, they're going to have to throw the ball to keep pace. So Jordan Reed's probably going to get a bunch. Maybe this is the week we see Josh Doxson actually having to be used. I was complaining before we started this. I drafted Jamison Crowder. I feel like I'm admitting to some type of sin, and it feels like a sin because he's garbage. But maybe if there was ever a week,
he's not garbage. I think they're just still trying. He's a new quarterback in a new system.
I'm basing this off Jamison's previous years. The only way he ends up being a legit player is if Alex Smith settles in, like you were saying, and starts dumping the ball to him. Now,
right.
The reason I wouldn't worry about Jamison Crowder is you have a 75% chance Jordan Reed gets hurt at some point.
I think Jordan Reed is probably the biggest hurt to Jamison Crowder.
100%.
If Reed is healthy, I think he's their number one target.
If you drafted Jordan
Reed,
and
obviously Chris Thompson coming out of the backfield.
Right. Let's get away from this game.
The Packers gave up the 6th most fantasy points to tight ends last week, so I think
Jordan Reed's the play.
Jordan Reed's the play, and I think he's a good DFS play too, because like we were saying, he's probably the only legitimate target that they have there that they can count on to run the entire, to cover the entirety of the field and not just run all these little underneath things that James Crowder takes.
Right. I'm just so frustrated with this draft. It's my fault for having any type of investment.
The thing I really want to get into is the fact that Aaron Jones is returning for this game.
That's going to be big.
So, over the first 2 weeks, the Redskins have allowed 4.6 and 4.7 yards per carry to the collection of Arizona Cardinal running backs, including obviously David Johnson and Chase Adams, who had 4 attempts. And that offense looks like garbage, and the fact that they gave up 4.5 yards per carry to those guys. And then in week 2, Indianapolis, with the way that they distribute the ball and the way that they're going to distribute the ball, they had Hines, Wilkins, and Marlon Mack all touch the ball. Marlon Mack and Wilkins each had 10 carries. They gave up 4.5 yards per carry to the Colts. So I think Aaron Jones, this is as good of a first week to come back from suspension as you can get. I think they're gonna try and get him going. I think they want to, limit as much as they can. Aaron Rodgers is, limit him to the possibility of him getting injured more.
They want him to stay in that pocket.
Right, stay in the pocket, run the ball, and you can do that. So I think Aaron Jones is going to be a good play too. If you were the one in your league that drafted him and said, I'm going to hold on to him for the first 2 weeks, and then I'm going to get hopefully a starting running back and RB1 running back, because Jamal Williams hasn't really shown us that he's capable of being the guy yet. At least this season, he had some glimpses last year, but I think they're going to at least try to get Aaron Jones going.
Let's just be honest with ourselves for a second, everybody in the fantasy world. We all wish they would have just stuck with Ty Montgomery and dumping the ball to him, because when he was the guy, that was the best scenario we've seen back there. Otherwise, you had Aaron Jones, 2 games of crushing it, and it's just been a who's going to do it next. Let's go back to Ty Montgomery. Please.
Yeah.
He's on my waiver wire. I would love him.
Let's go to the Raiders at the Dolphins. The Dolphins, again, are doing exactly what I thought they were going to do with the running back situation. They gave 11 carries to Drake and 9 carries to Frank Gore. Drake caught 4 of his 4 targets. So it's another 60% to Drake, 40% to Gore. I think it's going to be the whole season. So it's another reason why I stayed away from Drake.
You hush your mouth. I have too much Kenyon Drakes. Well, not too much, but in the wrong places, like where I have Devontae, so now I have to start him.
And he's not going to get hurt because he never does.
Frank Gore never gets hurt.
And he is not going to not put up numbers. 9 carries for 25 yards. Yeah, that's not the greatest, but
those are 9 less carries for Kenyon Drake.
Right.
Who went in the 3rd and 4th round.
I think the biggest disappointment from last week has to be Jared Cook. He had a great matchup against Denver, and we thought he'd see more after the performance that he had last Monday night. And this is another good matchup against the Dolphins, so hopefully, I know that they wanted to focus on trying to get Amari Cooper more involved, but hopefully they can look at this matchup against the Dolphins and see that, Amari Cooper's probably going to be up against Xavier Howard, who I think at the end of the year we're going to be looking at one of the top 5 shutdown corners in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's definitely emerging. But, It was good to see Amari Cooper catching all 10 of his targets for over 100 yards last week.
100%.
I was kind of hoping, not that I ever root against certain players, but I was definitely kind of hoping that Amari Cooper was, as bad as he was week 1, so that way I can try and buy low on him from people that were freaking out, or as we put it earlier, don't panic, bro.
Exactly. Panic. And it's interesting to see that being done on that Denver defense that we're so accustomed to seeing shut down. But remember, Aqib Talib's gone.
Yeah, he is.
He's down there in Los Angeles.
And DeMarcus Ware's gone too. So he was old, but he definitely was still supplying plenty of pressure on the quarterback. So obviously, Dolphins, you're going to start Drake if you have him because you have to. These wide receivers, Kenny Stills had a great game the week 1. He had those 2 touchdowns, but then last week he had 3 targets, caught 2 of them for 17 yards.
It's still Ryan Tannehill. It's still Ryan Tannehill.
I know Stills is definitely probably the number 1 target there on the team, but I want nothing to do with him. I think they're going to be way too inconsistent throughout the year.
And he's probably at best one of your flex options anyways if you have him. So at that point, I would wait. I wouldn't even.
The one thing I noticed watching that Dolphins game from last week is that it seems like Derby is their main tight end. It's not the rookie Gesicki.
Yeah,
I thought he was going to be the guy, man.
I would be hesitant on any fantasy realm in terms of that tight end because the talent that kid has, Gesicki, is unreal. So at some point, you'd have to imagine they'd realize the fact that we need to move the ball.
On the Raiders side of the ball, Marshawn Lynch, really encouraging last week. He got 18 touches, 20 touches. He had 18 carries, 2 targets, caught both of them. But he did have the touchdown. So
he's a weekly play at this point.
Yeah, I think so. I was kind of low on him. This was one of the backfields that I was avoiding because of how many players they got. But I think if Lynch is going to get this amount of work, then he's worth playing. Obviously. Jalen Richard, I was really hoping for another big game in the pass game for them. Looking at the Broncos defense is definitely not what it was last year. I think you don't have to be as afraid of playing guys against them as we have been in the past.
You just have to remember that they still have Von Miller, so there might be games where he just goes off.
Right.
And you're not going to be able to account for it or do anything about it.
Those freak defensive ends just have the ability to just completely take over games.
My favorite position in the entire field.
You look at the target distribution for the Raiders. Obviously, Amari Cooper was number 1. He had 10 targets. But then you look at Jared Cook, Roberts, Jordy Nelson, Martavis Bryant. They all had 4 targets.
Outside of Amari Cooper, I'm not starting a single receiver on that team until I know more.
I think they obviously said we need to focus on getting Amari the ball, and then we need to spread out the ball to everybody else. Derek Carr was great. He was 29 for 32. I mean, I don't know. As far as efficiency goes, I don't know if you can get any better than that. So if you have David Carr, I think you can start him this week. And obviously you're going to start Amari, you're going to start Lynch. So that does it for the Raiders and the Dolphins.
All right, let's hop over back to the NFC, if we will, to my 2018 world champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles hosting.
Or as my buddy calls them, the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, God, the accent. Hosting the Indianapolis Colts. Now, obviously, I'm going to go back to your initial question. As an Eagles fan, am I worried about these Vikings and Rams teams? And, that's a fair question based on what we saw last week. No doubt. That Eagles defense, by the end of this season, will be, you can quote me, and if I'm wrong, I'll eat it, the number 1 defense in the NFL. Ask me why.
In total yards and points
They're
against?
They're going to be number 1.
Just total defense?
Their defense is going to be so ferocious once it clicks that it's not, and this isn't just being a homer. This is based on years of experience watching the NFL.
Well, they did just give up over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns to Ryan.
I was watching, unfortunately, the Fitzmagic show and the lack of accountability on Deshaun Jackson. I passed that.
Revenge game.
Glorified preseason. You wait till that defensive line is actually clicking with Michael Bennett, and there is just so much firepower. I mean, it is wild. They will be the best defense by the end of End of the season.
I can see it
Sidney
happening
Jones
easily.
is going to be a lockdown corner. Once they move him to the outside, they'll put Jalen Mills to the slot and the nickel, whatever. He won't be getting blown up. They're going to be good. So the reason I'm saying all this is a good test this week. You got Andrew Luck sort of coming back into his own. I mean, he looked pretty good last week in terms of not playing the entire year before. And, T.Y. sort of did his, you can see the needle moving on that offense. You know what I mean? Week to week, they've looked better. And I'm taking that back from, last year, no luck. They're starting to look better, which means in my mind, any one of these given weeks between now and I would say week 7, byes not included, we might see a game where Andrew Luck reminds us of Andrew Luck, because he's the type of quarterback where, he could just do it against anyone, but they got to keep him standing up, which they will not be doing in this game. So I do not think this game is the game we see Andrew Luck come back to fruition. I think you're going to see a lower output from T.Y. His speed does make him a threat against this Eagles defense where it stands now. But I don't think Andrew Luck's going to have as much time to wait for T.Y. to get downfield. I think it's going to be a lot of dumps, slants. You're not going to see Fitzpatrick 2.0, but you will see on the other side of the ball. Now, I will say, since I'm talking the Colts offense for a second, if you have T.Y., you start him.
Right.
Luck, I might look in another direction instead of starting Luck. I would start Eric Ebron.
Mm-hmm. And I would start
Jack Doyle. Too. Now, Jack Doyle is the number 1 tight end there, but the question is this the Ebron we've been waiting for, or are we just getting hyped off of 1 week's worth of dominance?
Well, he did catch a touchdown in both games, week 1 and week 2.
But I'm talking more terms of how athletic he looked. Like, he looked like the kid that when he was drafted, everyone was really, really excited for, like, a new breed of tight end. And if that's the case, that's a weapon for Andrew Luck.
Mm-hmm.
But, outside of the tight ends, and you have to start T.Y., I'm not starting any of the running backs. The D-line is fantastic at defending the pass to the running back. I mean, they're really, and
especially now that Marlon Mack is back and that touch distribution is going to get,
it's going to be a mess,
more cloudy as when Robert Turbin comes back, and if they decide to throw Christian Michael into the mix.
But let's flip to the other side of the ball for a second, if we don't mind, ladies and gentlemen. Week 3 of your 2018 NFL season, the Ginger Jesus comes back to the NFL. Do not forget, Carson Wentz was the MVP until he got hurt.
The Ginger Jesus. I've never heard that before.
Until he got hurt, he was the MVP.
Oh, yeah.
We're going from Nick Foles, who, again, I was there. I loved watching what he did. Don't forget, Nick Foles also had plenty of more games that looked more like the beginning of this season than the end of last season. The receivers are depleted. So when you get a guy back like Carson, they're going to try and keep him. They're going to try and limit him to running around and stuff. But the talent and the smarts and the visibility, I think you're going to see some explosion again from this offense. But there is a certain position I'm a little less than confident in telling you who to start, and that would be at running back this week.
Right.
There's a lot of mystery around what is going on. They called a guy off the practice squad. Darren Sproles was hurt. Ajayi might be hurt. The only guy I would really like is Corey Clement, because he's shown you week to week it doesn't really matter if he starts. They look for him to throw the ball in the end zone. He has some explosion. And
if Ajayi is out and Darren Sproles is out, Corey Clement could easily be a top 10 running back.
Huge, especially with them trying to protect Carson. They're going to try and keep him limited, so he's going to probably move the ball quickly.
Honestly, dude, I see this game going a lot differently. Carson Wentz coming back from the injury. Yeah, I think he's gonna try and
he's gonna be rusty.
He's gonna try and make more plays than he should, and I think he's gonna throw a couple interceptions. I think, obviously, being down, if either one of those two, if Sproles or Ajayi misses, I think it really hurts. I think both of them are big parts of what they want to do, at least from the running back position. And don't forget that the head coach of the Colts, Frank Reich, was the quarterback coach for your boy Carson Wentz for the past 2 years, and he knows him inside and out. And I'm not going to say that the Colts defense is the Tampa Bay 2002 defense, but it does bring essence of the John Gruden leaving the Raiders, knowing exactly how they operate, and going over to Tampa Bay and just absolutely obliterating them with his game plan on defense. obviously, yes. If you drafted Carson Wentz and you've been playing whatever backup quarterback for the past 2 weeks, you're going to want to play Carson Wentz, and I'm not going to blame you for playing him. He has way too much upside to not play him.
I honestly don't know. Listen, as an Eagles fan, I'm going to come out and say maybe hold off on starting him this week. Maybe take a quarterback like take someone else this week while he gets used to it. The player on that team, though, Zach Ertz,
right?
He's in for a big one.
Zach Ertz, and I think Aguilar is going to continue to get the targets. And as we said earlier, you got
Jordan
your boy
Matthews.
Jordan Matthews back.
They're best friends.
It's a familiar face for a guy that is coming back into his first start. Like think of where Carson Wentz is right now. Like he was on pace for an MVP type season. He gets hurt, misses out on going through the playoffs. He watched his backup become the Super Bowl MVP. Like he wanted to be able to go week 1 this season, wasn't ready. They pushed him back to week 3. Like he's gonna want to come out and go haywire. Like I would be concerned about him as an Eagles fan, and if I had him on my roster, I probably would sit him for another week.
The last point on this game I want to make, and I'll make it quickly. The most important injury / position to watch that will dictate exactly how this game is going to go is that left tackle position. If it's not Jason Peters, and it probably won't be Jason Peters.
Well, he's dealing with an injury too. I didn't even see that.
Yeah, Stefan Wisniewski got him again. Year 2. Fun fact, most people don't know. Stefan Wisniewski is the reason Jason Peters' knee got torn up last year. He threw his player right into him. Sunday, steps on his ankle. Like, come on, dude. The left tackle is going to be the most important part of that entire football game. Mm-hmm. If it's not Peters, I'd be weary.
And it's not like they have a blocking tight end in
either of them
this season like they did last year with Brent Selleck. So I don't know if maybe you see Zach Ertz being stuck playing more so as an inline tight end to try and help out that tackle more so.
I think you'll see more of a Clement or whoever the running back is being held in.
To just chip
just block, because they know Zach Ertz doesn't block.
Right.
But I'm too worried about that game. Let's move on.
All right, so let's move on to the Broncos at the Ravens. I have a very juicy statistic for any of you Alex Collins owners out there, like myself, who have seen Buck Allen come in and vulture 2 goal line touchdowns that should have went to freaking Alex Collins. So this season in goal-to-go situations, right, Alex Collins has 6 snaps to Buck Allen's 5 snaps. That's great. But they've both gotten 2 touches. Alex Collins converted only one of them for a touchdown, whereas Buck Allen converted both of them. And when you look at their red zone snaps from last year as a whole, Alex Collins had 46 red zone snaps, and Buck Allen had 74 red zone snaps. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I think the only thing that makes sense is, yes, maybe Alex Collins has a small history of fumbling, and I think maybe John Harbaugh and that coaching staff in Baltimore kind of trusts Buck Allen a little bit more, so maybe that's why they give him more of those red zone, more of those goal-to-go situations. But as a fantasy owner of Alex Collins, it's been so frustrating for these first 2 weeks. We were tempted to put him on the list of, bro, dude, don't panic. But, I mean,
it could be one of those things.
There's serious reason to somewhat panic, at least.
Make sure you have Buck Allen.
In PPR leagues, at least, like you're going to see the majority of those running back targets go to Buck Allen and not to Alex Collins. It's frustrating. That I could deal with that, but to see my number 2 running back losing touches at the goal line and losing targets, it's not good, man. It sucks. So as we said, Alex Collins not so great this year so far. I think he had 7 carries the first week. He had 9 carries in week 2. Yes, he's had 2 horrible game scripts go his way. Obviously, in the first game, they were up so big. I think they were kind of trying to save him for Thursday Night Football. And then Thursday Night Football happens, and what happens? They go down so big because A.J. Green reminds us all that, yeah, Jalen Ramsey's really good, but so is he.
Right.
A.J. Green is still a beast. So
I think a lot of that running back stuff, too, has to do with this is basically a brand new offense in Baltimore. You have 3 new receivers.
Right.
Like you drafted, I know he got hurt, but you drafted a new tight end. So it was kind of the unexpected in terms of nobody was sure how this offense is going to – they weren't sure how the offense is going to flow.
Right. They drafted a quarterback with the first overall, with their first pick. Like, what are they going to do there?
Baltimore's in flux right now. Yeah. Like, they didn't have faith in Flacco. Now they think they got these 3 receivers that are way better. Maybe he's good.
The thing I'm counting on because I have Alex Collins in I think 4 of my 6 leagues, and
they'll settle.
It's Baltimore. They play in the AFC North.
Oh yeah.
Come late October, early November, when it's cold and it's snowy and it's rainy and it's windy, that's what you do in the NFC North is you slug it out and you play real football and you give the ball to your running back and you let him make plays. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that this whole Buck Allen thing is just a hangover from last year, because it just doesn't make any sense to give a running back that weighs, probably 180 pounds the ball at the goal line when you have a dude who's shown he's probably top 5 in just feet. Like the dude, he just makes people miss. So give him the ball. I don't get it, but I'll try not to get too aggravated. Yeah, as we were saying, these wide receivers for the Ravens,
John Brown's
been great, man. They both got 10. Him and Crabtree, they both got 10 targets last week. Obviously, John Brown is more of the deep targeted guy. He caught one, turned it into a touchdown. He had 92 yards to Crabtree's 56. I think they're both playable as wide receiver 2s. Maybe
the only
flexes,
thing I'd be a little worried about with John Brown is I know he did it 2 weeks in a row, but Willie Snead did it week 1 too. So you just hope that doesn't become a off again, on again situation where 1 week it's him, the next week it's Snead. As soon as that starts,
I'm hoping that because the 2 of them each got 10 targets, and I think Willie Snead only had maybe 4. I'm hoping that they go, okay, these are our 2 guys.
Right. I mean, look at the talent of those 2 versus Snead. It's not even comparable.
Right. And as you said, they drafted a tight end in the first round. In this past year's draft, he's been hurt, but I think when he comes back, I think he's going to hurt Willie Snead's target share more than Crabtree or Brown. Yep. So hopefully we get that guy back, because he should add another exciting element to this offense that could make them pretty explosive, I think. On the Broncos side of the ball, we're seeing Phillip Lindsay just...
much for Royce Freeman.
Yeah, the undrafted rookie free agent comes in. He led, last week he led the team in carries. This week he leads the team in carries, had 14 attempts. Yeah, one of them was for 50-something yards, but he ended the game with 100 total yards. Royce Freeman did have that touchdown, and he did get stuffed on the goal line on a different goal line carry. So there's a chance we could be looking at a 2-touchdown game from Royce Freeman. We'll be talking a little different maybe, but I think Phillip Lindsay is obviously the running back to play in Denver. I don't know if you can trust. Maybe you can play Royce Freeman in your flex, but I think
there's got to be better options on your team in your flex than a guy that might or might not get the ball.
Like, it seems like he's just now the new
handcuff for Phillip Lindsay.
Not even that, but
whatever his name is.
Jesus, what was his name? The dude that was on the team,
Devontae Booker?
C.J. Anderson.
Oh, C.J. Anderson.
He's just the new C.J.
Oh,
Anderson.
at least C.J. Anderson had that dominant year. Royce Freeman never did.
Yeah, I don't know. Denver, I feel like maybe they look at Freeman as more of a power back, and they look at Lindsay as more of the all-around 3-down back.
Listen, the one thing I've learned in my time doing fantasy football, and you could probably reiterate this, is the one thing out of any running back situation across all 32 teams, never trust what the Denver Broncos tell you in preseason.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
Don't ever do it. They've done this every single year.
Yeah.
Every year, one of their running backs is projected high, and that's not the guy.
Right.
They've been doing it for 20 years. I don't understand it. It's worked since Terrell Davis, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. You look at the targets that Demaryius Thomas got. I mean, 11 targets, man. It's like
they wanted to make up for the lack of effort from prior. I don't know. In preseason it was all Emmanuel Sanders this, Emmanuel Sanders that, and then it looked like let's get our stud involved.
Yeah. So Sanders is, I think, the top receiver there to play. He only had 4 targets and he turned them into 96 yards. Demaryius Thomas turned 11 targets into 18 yards. He crawled off the field. So if you have Demaryius Thomas, you keep him on your bench for another week. And honestly, I think if he can only turn 11 targets into 18 yards, like, how can you trust that,
That was kind of my point with them trying to get him involved this week.
Yeah.
They couldn't.
Let's move on to another NFC home game. I'm getting lost in all my notes here. Jesus, I got too many freaking index cards everywhere. I think, we got Bengals at Panthers. Is that next?
Yeah, we got the Bengals at the Panthers. That's a fantasy darling, I guess. That's another weird one. You got the running backs on both teams, Gio Bernard and McCaffrey. I think that if you have Gio, hopefully you were the one that had Joe Mixon. So you're starting Gio. I will put this out there. Giovanni Bernard was their starting running back before. Giovanni Bernard has been on that team through 2 separate running back changes. There's a reason. I know he's small. You tell me whatever. There's a reason that they keep going for this bell cow running back, not named Gio Bernard.
So last year with Mixon out, Giovanni Bernard averaged. He had at least 97 total yards in those 3 games or a touchdown. And in his career, where he's gotten at least 15 touches, there's been 5 times where he's gotten 15 touches. He's averaged 16.5 PPR fantasy points. So as a starting running back, because that's what he's going to be this week with Joe Mixon out, and for the next couple of weeks, you
have to start him.
You have to start him, and I think even in your RB2 spot, he's going to get the touches, and he's on it. You look at what they just did to the Ravens with Tyler Boyd as their number 2. He beat him up. AJ Green obviously beat him up. I think there's going to be plenty of space for Giovanni Bernard to operate.
I guess my point with Gio is you're going to see some production early while he plays, regardless of what he does over the next few weeks. When Joe Mixon comes back, Gio's gone.
Oh yeah,
it's
totally. It's just these 3 weeks,
right?
2 or 3 weeks, whatever Mixon is out for, he's worth playing for sure.
100%.
The other running back in this game, holy crap, 15 targets last week with Greg Olsen out, caught 14 of them. We're talking McCaffrey here. He had over 100 passing or 100 receiving yards.
It all comes down to Cam looks uncomfortable throwing the ball downfield without Greg Olsen. I mean, I know Funchess did good, but he looks uncomfortable throwing the ball downfield.
Yeah, I think McCaffrey's in line for another big game. So
he's going to be matchup proof.
These are the guys that you're going to play. Are you willing to play Funchess in a slot?
I'm playing Funchess as my flex because as reluctant as Cam looks to throw downfield, he's going to try.
And the Bengals last year did give up the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers, so it's not the worst matchup.
The volume will be there.
We are going to take a quick break because I finished my beer about 3 games ago and I need another one. So I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to finish running through. We got, I think we're about halfway through. It's going to be a little longer episode, so sorry for that, guys. But like I said, we'll be back in a couple minutes, and come back with us. Thanks. Welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for coming back with us. I have gotten my beverage, and I am no longer parched, so we are going to jump right into the next game. We got Titans at Jags. This one's another pretty simple one, especially if Blaine Gabbert is going to be starting at quarterback. Last week, he went 13 for 20, and he scored a touchdown, but it was on a swing pass, so I wouldn't really consider that a throwing the ball downfield. But obviously, against the Jaguars, you're not going to start any receivers. You're not going to start Derrick Henry probably, unless you absolutely have to. I think the only Titans player that you can start with any confidence is Dion Lewis, unless Marcus Mariota plays, which I don't think he's going to play. It doesn't seem like he's...
It really doesn't.
It doesn't seem like he's
and even if Marcus plays, the only other player that you can't be even confident because he didn't do anything would be the tight end. But since it's not Delaney Welker and we haven't seen anything else...
Right.
It's Deion Lewis.
Yeah, Jono Smith was not even targeted in last week, so
I don't even want to talk about that.
And I know you were pretty excited about him, so that sucks.
It was a forced excitement, ladies and gentlemen. I had Delaney Walker, and all of those tight end waivers we discussed were gone. So,
well, I mean, even you look at the biggest tight end waivers from last week. Jared Cook didn't play well. Greg Kittle didn't play well.
The only one that
George Kittle, sorry,
the one that did the best, we'll get to momentarily.
So on the Jaguar side of the ball, if Fournette is out again. I don't see
Yeldon's out.
I feel like Yeldon really disappointed last week. He had the opportunity to show that he could be a starting running back on another team, and he just didn't show that. I think they obviously really liked Corey Grant in the passing game. He had 7 targets, caught 6 of them, 56 yards. TJ Yeldon only had 5 catches for 12 yards, so he's not the answer in the passing game. He's just not going to cut it. So I was super excited about picking up TJ Yeldon, and I'm kind of glad that I wasn't able to get him on waivers because I would have felt obligated to start him, and he did not play well. So you look at their receivers. I think Keenan Cole has proved that he is the number one receiver there. He got 8 targets. He had that one awesome catch, the Odell Beckham catch 2.0. He caught that touchdown in the end zone and ran off like Bo Jackson. He was great. The one guy on the team that was targeted the most, Dante Moncrief, and we were talking about this earlier. I was watching the game, this Jaguars Patriots game from last week. The Jags Patriots game from last week, and it seemed like Bortles was almost targeting Stephon Gilmore, who was definitely their best corner on the team. I'm pretty sure he was on Moncrief when he caught that touchdown. I'm pretty sure he was on Keenan Cole when he had the big catch and the touchdown. So I don't know what was up with that, but I think Blake Bortles took a huge step forward. The Patriots obviously said, we're going to stop the run. We're going to force you to throw the ball, and he did that. He had a great game. So I think you can going forward. I think you can start him as well as a start him against good matchups, and I think this is one of them. Let's move on to the next game I have here, which is the 49ers at the Chiefs. Garoppolo did not have the greatest game, but, I mean, when you look at the production from the run game that they got in Week 2, Breida had a great game, so they didn't really need to throw the ball all that much. And they get the Chiefs defense this week, who have absolutely zero pass rush. Ben Roethlisberger was just chilling in the pocket all game. Just they got down early because Patrick Mahomes is a beast, but the defense just does not look good. And if Eric Berry misses again, I think this could be one of many shootouts this week.
Is this the breakout game this year for Goodwin?
Hopefully, if he plays. I mean, he's definitely, if he plays, he's definitely, like I said, he's got a great matchup. It's just if he can get on the field, they had Pierre Garçon got targeted 4 times and Pettis got targeted once. So they obviously came into this game going, we're going to focus on running the ball, and they did. They really did. 11 carries to Breida, 14 carries to Morris. So hopefully, if Marquise Goodwin comes in and he's healthy, maybe we see the focus on that offense kind of switch more to the passing game. But, like I said, hopefully it turns into a shootout, and hopefully he is on the field, because he's definitely, there was a lot of excitement from most people about him coming into the season.
Absolutely.
So that kind of does it for that game. If
you have the Chiefs, you're starting them.
Yeah, start all your Chiefs, start your 49ers. I think it should be a big blowout. The next game that we have, what do we got? Saints at Falcons, right?
Saints at Falcons. Listen, I'm not even going to dive too far into this because, again, you're going to start Alvin Kamara. You're going to start Julio Jones. You'll start Drew Brees and Michael Thomas. Mm-hmm. Matt Ryan's a toss-up. Listen, it's Matt Ryan. Chances are he's going to come out swinging in this game because they're going to have to. The question mark from this game would be the tight ends. Ideally, they're going to be hit or miss week to week. These are 2 of the few teams where, unlike my Giants theory of last year where I started any tight end that played the Giants, quarterbacks like Drew Brees and Matt Ryan, they're great at exploiting matchups, but if they get into the flow of throwing that ball, there's a chance they don't target the tight end at all. Right. It's crazy. But, Hooper last week looked good. I'd start him. You're going to start your players on both teams. This is going to be a shootout. I could see it really getting...
Yeah, you bring up the tight end from the Falcons, Hooper. I think he has probably the worst matchup of any skill position player in this one because the Saints did give up the 4th fewest fantasy points to tight ends last year, and so far this year they haven't really done all that bad to tight ends either. So, they did give up that big play what was it, last week, but...
The only reason I highlighted Hooper specifically, and I'll be quick on this, is because for whatever reason, bizarrely or not, Julio does not get in the end zone. He just doesn't get in the end zone.
So weird, man. It doesn't make any sense.
On any given game or matchup, the reason I highlighted Hooper is because he's the only one they're going to throw to down there at this point. I mean, Calvin Ridley finally looked good, but that was a first week thing. Like, I don't know. You know what? If I'm anybody starting the Falcons, Julio, Tevin Coleman,
because you have to.
You have to.
And because of the volume that he's going to get.
There's enough other tight ends that you don't have to go Hooper. You really don't. But if you do, it might not be a complete wash. So, high-scoring game, I'm taking Saints players left and right, Julio. That's all you really need. What do we got next on this slate?
Chargers at Rams, the battle of Los Angeles.
The battle of who fans could care less.
Two awesome defenses, two awesome offenses. This, again, could be another shootout. It could be a big running backs game because they have the best matchups if there is a good matchup against either of these defenses. But and it's the battle of the 2015 first-round running backs. Obviously we're talking about Melvin Gordon and Todd Gurley here. You're going to start both of them because they're both beasts. Hopefully Melvin Gordon's all right. It seems like he's fine, but it was kind of scary to look at.
Yes, it
seeing
was.
him in the fourth quarter of the game, or I think it was actually the third quarter, whatever it was. But it was not nice seeing him on the ground there. The Rams are down. They're awesome. They're probably the best kicker in the league, Greg the Leg. He's, I think, what was it, a hamstring injury or something? But he's going to be out for a couple weeks. So if you have him on your roster, obviously don't start him. And I also, if there is any kicker, maybe there's two of them in the league that if on their bye you actually keep them and you actually roster two kickers for a week, it's him and Justin Tucker. But if he's going to be out multiple weeks, don't waste a roster spot on a backup kicker.
If you got Zerloin, look at Dan Bailey. He just got signed on by the Vikings. He's going to be a top 10 fantasy kicker more weeks than not.
Because that offense is so good and because the defense is so good.
Exactly.
Like I said, you're going to start Gordon. Keenan Allen's a must play. These Rams receivers, this is probably one of the more interesting things in fantasy football this season, I think, is the distribution of targets to these three wide receivers for the Rams and how it's going to go throughout the season. Obviously the first week it was Kupp's week because he had that touchdown. Week 2 it was Brandon Cooks' week. He had the 150 yards. But
you're throwing a dart.
You really are
throwing a dart. If you can avoid it until you see who becomes the true guy.
And but that's the thing. I don't know if there is a true guy. I feel like that offense is built obviously Kupp is the possession receiver. He's the red zone guy. Obviously Cooks is the deep threat guy. And I think Woods is kind of just, the other receiver that's running the majority of all the routes that you would see an average wide receiver running.
No matter how much explosive this offense is going to be all year, your safest bet is Todd Gurley.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For Jared Goff owners out there, that last week must have been super frustrating watching them just march the team down the field, and then every time they get in the red zone, they give it to Todd Gurley, which is great for your Todd Gurley owners out there.
Yes, it
was. One thing that I really wanted to talk about is Austin Eckler. If you're the Melvin Gordon owner, we said it earlier, this might be, the year of the handcuff running back. But if you are the Melvin Gordon owner, you have to go out and you have to get Austin Eckler. He's shown he's probably, besides James Conner, he's probably one of the most talented handcuffs out there. And Gordon has shown that I'm not going to say he can't stay healthy, but he did miss a couple games first 2 seasons. So I think if you have Melvin Gordon, you have to go get Austin Eckler. And
you should do it right now.
You should do it right now. And if Gordon doesn't play, you should feel plenty confident in playing Eckler because he showed that he can handle a big workload.
Mm-hmm.
We have this Sunday night football game left, which is Patriots at where are they playing? The Detroit Lions.
Well, first, real quick, we got to just run through Bears, Cardinals, and Cowboys, Seahawks.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right because both of those games, actually, I think it was good to think like that. Let's just do Bears, Cardinals. Here.
Just toss it away.
I would just toss it away. If you're going to be watching a game on TV, it's not one I'd be wanting to see. Even less so for the Cowboys, Seahawks. But the Bears, Cardinals. I think on the Bears offense, I think you can start Trubisky. I think that's all right. Allen Robinson looked good. I'm starting Allen Robinson if I have him. Trey Burton, hey, we saw some life. That was nice.
Yeah, even though it was
nice.
on
one freaking
a shovel pass
and then never looked at again. So, unfortunately, if you have Trey Burton, you're starting him because you drafted him,
Him and Tariq Cohen are the two,
question
what
marks.
the heck?
I'd maybe go get like a Ebron or Doyle or the guy we're going to talk about next if I had Burton until I see him being used.
Right.
You can't have another week one.
I thought the two of them were going to be just
clicking
all-stars in this offense.
Jordan Howard looks pretty good. I mean, he was a slow start last week, but he came around. And then, on the Cardinals side, Khalil Mack is an animal. He's a game changer all into himself. So, Larry Fitzgerald, David Johnson, anyone else on that team you'd be starting from that offense?
No,
and they shouldn't even be on your roster.
I really hope that they just go, all right, Sam Bradford, you did great, but it's time for the rookie, and hopefully he does what Josh Allen did in Buffalo last week, which is put a little tiny bit of excitement in there, right?
Yep.
We mentioned Cohen a little bit. He's only had 13 touches this season, and coming into the season, everyone, and they even said it on the broadcast the other night, he's the X factor of the offense. X factor getting 13 touches.
X factor on the bench, they meant.
Yeah, I don't understand that. And you look at just the target share of Howard and Cohen so far this season. Howard's gotten 9 targets, Cohen's gotten 5. I was obviously wrong on this. I thought that Howard was not going to be involved in the pass game at all. And he's been more involved in the pass game than Cohen has. So I think you can sit Cohen, honestly, if you're looking at – I cut Tariq Cohen for Giovanni Bernard in one of my leagues. So
Tariq Cohen will not be a viable standalone fantasy option unless Jordan Howard gets hurt. And I don't necessarily consider Jordan Howard a must-handcuff running back.
And even if,
Trubisky and Cohen clearly are not working out the way they thought.
I don't think that Tariq Cohen – is going to be as involved in this offense as we originally thought he was.
Right.
And hopefully they get it going with Trey Burton, because I know a lot of people were super high on him. The Cardinals they look like a freaking high school team, man. They allowed the most PPR points per game to running backs this season so far. So, Jordan Howard is a must start, obviously. And
you're starting your Cardinals offense. Unfortunately, it's either Fitzgerald or David Johnson. Anyone else outside that conversation, don't
and I know
talk
Fitz
about it.
is dealing with a little bit of a injury too. So honestly, I don't even know if he's worth starting either, because this Bears defense looks for real, dude.
Well, I hope those of you have been listening, because I know you took Fitz high, but we've given you a lot of good options to have stocked that bench. What do you think about this? My least favorite team in the NFL. I couldn't be happier with the way their offense has looked. I'll give them last week as a aberration. Cowboys at Seahawks. Terrible defense, struggling offense. Mm-hmm. Injuries across the board it's a weird game. But your boy last week number 2 of Disley.
Yeah.
He is the tight end 1. Another touchdown, another big stat line.
Yep.
Is he a week-to-week starter? I think he might be.
I think he has to be. I mean, until they show that they're not going to use him as much as they have been.
Right. I think the only people that didn't put a waiver claim in for Disley are the guys that had the tight ends maybe 1 through 5 in the draft.
Check this out. So Disley so far this season has run 45 pass routes to only 5 blocking assignments. So coming into the league, he was touted as a strictly a blocking tight end, but he's clearly shown us that he's way more than that.
That's just Pete Carroll understanding his offensive line is so bad that there's not even a point.
Pete Carroll, you can't take anything.
I can't stand to coach any less than him.
I'm worried about Russell Wilson. I'm not going to lie.
I'm not starting Russell Wilson. In fact, on that team, in the offense on the Seahawks, there's really only one name other than Disley I'm comfortable starting, and that would be Tyler Lockett.
Yeah. The running backs, you can't start them either until one of them emerges.
And that line is so bad. Who knows if one will?
And the Cowboys, that's the matchup. I think this is going to be a beatdown by the Cowboys, to be honest, because of the Dallas D line versus the Seahawks O line.
As much as I hate it, it's going to be Zeke, and they're not going to be able to keep up.
The Seahawks have allowed 6 sacks and 3 tackles for a loss in both games against the Bears and the Broncos. So total, so far in 2 games, they've given up 12 sacks and 6 tackles for a loss on top of that. The Cowboys, on the other side, have 9 sacks and 6 tackles for a loss so far this season. So I think that
defense might eat.
that defensive line for the Cowboys might just go to town on this horrible Seahawks offensive line.
Let's flip the ball for a second on the Cowboys. If you're starting somebody other than Zeke, God bless you.
I mean,
don't buy into Tavon Austin.
Well, what about Cole Beasley in a PPR league? I think
Cole came out flat last week. And the reason I'm highlighting that is because that was the fear. Cole Beasley was a viable starter if you saw the volume week to week, because that means that was Dak's security blanket. Game flow or not, there wasn't one last week. I'm staying as far away from that receiver mess as I can.
Okay.
Zeke is the only offensive player on that team that you're starting, and you have to. I mean, you have to.
And the Cowboys were playing so slow. Like they were, and I can't blame them. They don't have much at the receiver group, and they have one of the best running backs in the league. They have an awesome offensive line, and what looks like a really good defense too. So it makes sense to play slow. And
Dak can run the ball too, which helps Zeke. Like that's just going to be what you see from them this year.
Yeah. So maybe those Cowboy receivers really aren't in line to be all that productive, but I think if there is one Cowboys receiver to roster, I think it would be Cole Beasley in a PPR league.
Yep. So what do we got next year? That Sunday night game you mentioned?
Yeah, Pats at Lions.
That Lions team's bad.
And you look at what the Pats just did, probably the biggest thing from this game is, at least the biggest thing to watch is going to be if Josh Gordon is available, if he's even
There's no way he's
active.
playing this game.
Yeah, probably not, right? I mean, even if his hamstring isn't bothering him, I still don't see him. Even if he was 100%, I don't think the Patriots would play him. I don't think the Patriots play people that they don't trust. And
unless it's, again, Hall of Famer Randy Moss on a go route,
right,
which is a straight running route, that's not Josh Gordon. So I don't see him playing this game.
And just looking at the Patriots receiving core going forward throughout the season, obviously Julian Edelman will be back in 2 weeks, and that will definitely give them a little bit more stability. But if you told me coming into this season that Philip Dorsett would be the leading wide receiver in targets for the Patriots, I would have told you you're crazy. James White leads the team in targets with 17 targets. We were talking earlier, like if Josh Gordon is healthy and if he does learn the playbook and he does get the trust from Tom Brady, who does he hurt the most? And I don't think there is one guy that he hurts the most. I think
it's just going to make it that much more difficult to start any one of them with confidence, not named Gronk.
Right. Like you got James White getting 17 targets throughout the season. Gronk's at 12. Dorsett's at 14. Hogan's at 10. And then you got Burkhead and Sonny Michel each with 2 and 3. So I think Josh Gordon will fall in. He'll probably maybe get 4 or 5.
And by the time he gets going, Edelman's back too. So at that point,
there's no sense in sitting here trying to go, oh, maybe he'll get this, maybe he'll get this, because he could come in and get 10 targets a game and be a top 5 receiver, and in 2 weeks he could get cut. So we have no idea, like, the possibilities for Josh Gordon. You could go crazy thinking about what could happen with him, and I'm just going to wait it out and see what happens with him, see how his hamstring holds up, see if he can learn the playbook and all that. Let's go to the last game of the week, a Monday night barn burner. What I think
frustrating teams because no one expected any of this.
Right.
Like Fitzmagic, man, came out and diced my team, diced them.
400-plus passing yards in both games and 4 touchdowns.
And I'll tell you what, after I watched Mahomes divvy up that Steelers defense like it was nothing,
right?
And the week before, a fresh out-of-the-box Cleveland team tying them, I'm going Fitzpatrick.
He's obviously got a rapport with Deshaun Jackson.
Good God, isn't that the case?
And you look at the Bucs team as a whole, they can't run the ball.
No.
And their defense is not all that great, especially in the secondary. So I think Fitzpatrick is just going to keep throwing the ball.
Wouldn't you if you had those 3 wide receivers?
Why not,
I mean, look at Godwin. Godwin's had a touchdown each week on top of D-Jack going off. And Mike Evans has been playing the best football of his career. They're moving that. And then we didn't even talk about O.J. Howard. That ball is in the air.
Yep.
It stays in the air, and it's going to stay in the air. I'm loading up.
Between Deshaun and Chris Godwin, sorry, dude. It's 5 touchdowns in 2 games.
Unbelievable. It's the one rare instance where you could start all 3 receivers on your team and actually have ended up winning.
Yeah.
It's
all three of
bizarre.
them scored a touchdown.
And the tight end last week.
Yeah, it's true.
You could have started all four of the
You
passing
could have
options.
started Fitz, too, and gotten a 404 touchdown performance from a quarterback.
Let's not talk about Ryan Fitzpatrick winning people money on FanDuel, not named Adam or Matt.
Yeah. The Steelers, I don't want to overreact to the target share there, but holy crap, Antonio Brown has 33 targets in 2 games. That's obviously not going to continue with...
But Juju's looked really good.
Juju's look great too, but with hopefully Le'Veon comes back soon. But they were down big, so they obviously had to focus on throwing the ball last week. But and he was still freaking on the sideline bitching and moaning and complaining about how he was getting targeted.
There's
he got
trouble.
33 targets in 2 weeks.
Listen,
dude.
there's
Relax.
trouble. There's trouble brewing in what I like to call hillbilly Philly, aka Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
There's trouble brewing out there, and I would not want to be on the receiving end of something when it does, because it's going to have a devastating effects because of where you had to draft their player. We're already seeing it with Le'Veon. Like, if you have Le'Veon, I'm very sorry. That sucks. Like, God bless you if you got James Conner, but I know people were fishing him in drafts.
Right.
Juju actually looks really good. You have to start Antonio, but at some point, is this coming to a head?
Yeah, Juju had 19 targets in week 2. I think that might have been another reason why Antonio Brown was getting so frustrated, was because he saw Juju get targeted more. But
The
you're going to keep
is headed for a train crash.
you're
Train wreck.
going to keep playing Connor until Le'Veon is back. You're going to keep playing Juju and Antonio because they're beasts. You're going to Ben Roethlisberger on the road. I'm not starting him if I have him, even though it is Monday Night Football. But yeah, I mean, this Buccaneers offense has been probably one of the biggest surprises of the season, for not only looking at what their passing game has been, but also, Jones hasn't even been active in either of the first 2 games.
Right, they're doing this with a complete lack of running game.
Yeah.
A complete lack. Like, it's unbelievable.
Peyton Barber hasn't really done anything. So
God,
it's Fitzmagic, and this should be another shootout. I mean, like you said, Mahomes beat up this Steelers defense. He only completed 16 passes, and 6 of them were for touchdowns.
and they look so easy.
So this should be probably
And more important,
one of the bigger
shootouts
of the week.
You know what's important about that last stat, and then I'll leave it on this? Tyreek Hill wasn't involved in that game plan for like 3/4 of that game, and they were still out there throwing the ball like that. That's their top weapon. I know Kelsey's great. I'm not saying he's not. I'm saying that 6 touchdowns. It was like 4 of them came without Tyreek Hill having a catch yet. And then I know he had a big play, a big touchdown, but before that play, wasn't involved. He didn't have a catch. He had 0 points into the third quarter, and they were still doing that.
Right.
So
It was definitely good seeing Kelsey coming back and
Thank
having
God.
a big game. I know a lot of people were kind of freaking out, like, oh, is this what we're going to expect from the Kansas City offense? Patrick Mahomes doesn't like his tight end, but obviously he does because Kelsey is
how could you not?
elite. So that will do it for the week 3 preview episode of the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks for tuning in with us, and definitely check us out next week for the week 4 preview. We had a little issue this past week with the waiver wire portion of the show that we do on the Dudes and Beer podcast, but we're going to get that fixed so that way starting next week it's going to be consistent. It'll be there, so definitely tune in to the Dudes and Beer podcast every Tuesday night for the waiver wire special. Get your teams all lined up and ready for week 4. And again, thanks a lot for tuning in. Adam, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, I just hope everybody enjoys the modern greatest show on turf with my boy, the Ginger Jesus, Carson Wentz.
We'll see.
Back in action.
We'll see. All right, everybody.
Good luck, everybody.
Good luck.
Please
See you
take
next
Stephon
week.
Diggs if you can.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast. To listen to our episodes or chat with us live, download the official Dudes and Beer app, available on Android and iDevices, or visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find all of our episodes on Breach.tv, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcast service. Dudes and Beer is a proud member of the HC Universal family of podcasts. For more about our sponsors, podcasts, and other content, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com or download the free HC Universal Network app. Thanks for listening, everybody. And until next time, drink responsibly.